quick, we can't disturb her too long. Little Gert is actually another Gertrude. Lots of little baby scorpions. So recently my friend Raymond said, Dave, would you like some baby forest scorpions? I've bred quite a few, got a few surplus. He's all sending me invertebrates for free, including some really cool tarantulas. Tarantulas down to millipedes, I guess. And I said, oh, I'd love some. Always handy to have. And I'll tell you why. I've always employed giant scorpions for part of my outreach program to schools. And over time they come and go, but they do live a long time. So I was really keen to get some captive bred babies, because the male I'd got, the big male I'd got, who knows how old he is, so it's always nice to have some captive bred ones growing on. Going back in time, when I started my business 15 years ago, and before that as a kid, the giant scorpions we kept were always emperor scorpions from Africa. They look cooler than the Asian forest scorpions, I think. They're just a little bit hairier, big old claws there. They look great. They look really impressive. And of course, over-collecting for the over-collecting for the pet trade, as well as other factors, has led to that species decline in the wild so noticeably that CITES banned them. That's it. We're not ripping them out of the wild just for pets anymore. That's over. So then we're down to the few people who've got them. I've got to look at breeding them. They were so cheap, so impressive. Nobody really bothered to breed them. They just dragged them out of the wild. When people finally did start pairing them and breeding them in captivity from the stock that was left, that price went from a few quid really to very expensive here in the UK for quite some time. The price is coming down now. Last time I looked, they were like 80 quid each, an Asian forest scorpion, 20 quid, to give you some kind of how it's gone. And of course, the Asian forest scorpions then became really heavily collected because they've always played second fiddle for looks and pets to the emperor scorpion. But now the Asian forest scorpion, Thailand, Southeast Asia as a whole, different similar looking species are getting ripped out of the wild, and have been now for quite a few years en masse. Is that good? Of course it's not. I actually tell the kids when I'm at schools, when I was your age, all the reptiles and creepy crawlers you've seen and all my tropical fish that I kept in my bedroom were all taken from the wild. That's how fish and reptile shops got their stock, I tell them. I say nowadays, you guys are lucky, I'm lucky, the animals are lucky, because we breed them in captivity. Most of these things we don't need to take out the wild anymore. Bit hypocritical, because my current Asian forest scorpion, I know for sure, I bought him online from a spider shop. He's a wild caught animal. You see them at many of the bug shows, and they're wild caught large animals. I've bred them in captivity many years ago from a colony of wild caught animals, and those babies, I gave most of them away. I kept a handful, and they lived for many years, and they grew into examples that were big enough, of course, for my school program. They've since passed away. The last one got in touch with a local spider shop and said, have you got any large forest scorpions? I need one. And I knew full well it'd be from the wild. You know, my one makes no difference amongst the thousands caught, but of course they all add up. If you've ever been to Thailand and you've gone to one of the sort of touristy food markets or just the local markets, you'll see hundreds of Asian forest scorpions on a skewer, I don't know, fried in a bit of peanut oil, for that sort of gimmicky touristy thing. I ate a scorpion. If you actually look in the rainforest for these things, by night with an ultraviolet light, or by day by flipping logs and rubbish and rocks, I didn't find that many. I found a couple on, I think, 2 weeks out in Thailand the last time I was there. They're not that common, certainly everywhere, and my mind boggles of the sheer volume of these animals that come into the pet trade, as well as the thousands at every food market. Thousands and thousands. They're not captive bred, are they? They're taken from the wild. So it's not just the pet trade by any means, but the whole lot of these things being taken from the wild for human consumption is shocking. Shocking. So of course we need to captive breed these things. So, hypocritically, I know I've got a wild caught animal. You've probably got one too. I know I've got a wild caught scorpion that's a species that's substituted for another wild caught species that was banned due to over collection. It's a creepy crawly. So what? No, not so what. They are important in their ecosystems, like just about every living species on the planet. But really good, ironically, for school education programs. So I've got some more growing on, captive bred from Raymond. Imagine my surprise yesterday when I went to get Gert, not Gertrude as the other one was called, because he's a boy, Gert out of his enclosure, hadn't got my glasses on, first thing in the morning, and I thought, oh, he's died and covered in mould in a couple of days since I last saw him. Looked closer, Gert the boy, it's obviously a female, covered in little scorpions. Fantastic, more captive bred stock that I can work with in the future. But of course, it doesn't really count, does it? Because they're captive born, which is very different from captive bred, especially different from captive bred stock. So why is it a problem? Well, it's great in a way because it means, all being well, I won't need another wild caught animal, and I can give some of these away so other people don't need to get wild caught animals. But of course, technically they are, because if this female scorpion, which obviously bred in the wild, I've had her for months, like months and months, probably a year, which is weird. I'll have to check. But this isn't a newly arrived animal. This is an animal I've kept alone and had for possibly a year, but certainly many, many months, if not. I need to check that. The problem is, had she been left in the wild, her babies would have been born in the wild and they would have kept that local population buoyed up. So you've took an adult breeding age female from the wild, and we're doing this by the hundreds of thousands every year, but you've also took literally a pregnant female. So you've took, let's say, not one animal, but maybe a dozen or more animals from the wild. Of course, all those babies wouldn't grow up in the wild. They've got every chance to in captivity. One or two survived. It would have replaced the parents. There you've got a continuum, maybe not a growing population, but a steady population. Those parents only need 2 babies to survive, to replace themselves in that sort of gene pool. So it's, we know that most of our animals now are captive bred, but it still does irk me that I've even got a couple of giant snails, which again, I know are wild caught, along with my captive bred stock. We need wild animals to produce captive bred stock, but we can breed those scorpions in captivity. Same with tarantulas. We breed lots of species, but we know other species and other animals are coming in. I'm not totally against it. I just think when it's such a sheer volume, those wild populations certainly need monitoring, maybe some sort of regulation. I don't know. I'm not trying to be a hypocrite here, but for sure, I'm sure they'll be banned eventually because we'll be depleting those forest scorpions from their ecosystem. So it is yin and yang. Wow, I've bred them, but I haven't bred them. It's very different. You can't say, here's my captive bred baby tarantulas or scorpions. If that animal was pregnant, monitor lizards waking up. There's a story. So just some thoughts. Cute animals, great to work with, look great under UV for the schools, easy to keep. If you do want to keep Asian forest scorpions, go for a fairly deep composty substrate. Cheap compost mixed with some coir and some play pit sand works well. It holds a burrow. They like a flat rock, a flat piece of wood, as I'll show you in a minute with the babies. They are easy to keep. I do let the babies eat some dead stuff. Sometimes I feed them live stuff. Always worry a bit about live crickets, but certainly things like little wood lice and small cockroaches, probably not such a worry. They seem to thrive and grow on really easily. Once they leave their parent, their skins have hardened up a bit. They're fascinating to keep. Everyone worries about things that bite. I don't know why. It just seems a really big thing. A lot of people keep snakes. They're actually scared of snakes biting them when they probably don't need to be. And they probably wouldn't get bitten so much if they weren't so scared. I don't know. It doesn't seem to faze me, and my snakes and animals are very calm. Gertrude the scorpion, he comes to many schools. He doesn't get handled, but I've handled emperor scorpions freely and Asian forest scorpions. I've had a few stings off Asian forest scorpions. The worst thing was from a grown-on youngster from my last ones years ago, and my thumb swelled up. It went numb and swelled up a little bit. Normally, it just makes you swear and shake your hand, and within 2 or 3 minutes, I find Asian forest scorpion stings totally subside. They just sting not as bad as a bee sting, to be quite honest, for me. But like most animals, if you handle them calmly, safely, even if they sting you or bite you, if you don't flinch or react, they soon realise that's a waste of energy and a waste of time. A, because it has no effect on getting rid of you, and B, because you don't eat them or hurt them anyway. You might have your allergies. I see a lot of this on YouTube. Oh, you know, but you might have an allergy. Yeah, you might do, but that's kind of to everything, isn't it? You might have an allergy to anything. It's always like, don't touch that, you might have an allergy. Some people really don't live, do they? It must be terrifying for them. For most of us, an Asian forest scorpion sting is tantamount to just, ouch, don't drop the animal. That's what it would be, a bad thing. You're going to hurt the animal. Easy things to keep. I was going to say, at least try and buy captive bred youngsters, but the trouble is, most of them are from wild caught animals at this stage. That is changing, and that will change. So enjoy the species, but like all these invertebrates, do be a bit mindful of where they're coming from. You've only got to go to your local bug shows, and you'll probably see, wherever you are in the world, whichever species, but Asian forest scorpions as a whole, because they're big and impressive, they're a cheap replacement for the emperor scorpion from Africa. You'll see a lot of them. Think about that all around the world, and then think about all the Asian markets, food markets that are selling them. My mind boggles that there is any left in the wild, for sure. So very basic setup. So the reason this one's set up so simply is because her job is to come along to many of my school educational visits, part of rainforest talks, and I don't want to be digging up an enclosure and fishing him out. So it has got a fairly deep substrate so it can burrow, but a very simple little covering there, little house. But look at that. Absolutely amazing. Certainly a few babies on there. So we'll put her little house back. So very simple. We certainly don't want to disturb or frighten those babies. So pop a little house back on there. So simple setup. But remember, I can't say this simple setup worked well for breeding, because this is a lone animal simply here for a job of education, which in a way is ironic too. So these ones are set up in here. These are from my friend Raymond. Half a dozen babies from his forest scorpion breeding. Kind of bioactive. I put lots of those little white wood lice in there, which I think would be sort of a natural food. Either a flat piece of bark or a flat piece of slate that those little things can get under and feel snug. Works really well. You can keep it simply, just a compost layer and just a piece of bark or slate and nothing else. I do put a small tiny water dish in there, and I've raised them before by just chucking in handfuls of, well, a handful of very small crickets and letting them get on with it. Sometimes crickets can be annoyingly dangerous to things that shed their skin. These ones, outside the main bit where they can come and go under the bark, I pile up a few dead dubia roaches or dead crickets that I've just pinched the heads on, so they're sort of freshly dead in the evening, and they've always gone. So easy to keep. I don't see them in this setup because I don't disturb it, but again, you can keep it much simpler with just a reasonably deep compost layer. They do like to dig down, and just that one piece of slate or bark, and they'll all go under there together just fine. And before, I've had no problem growing these scorpions on. So easy to keep usually. My reptile room's reasonably warm. Soon the new ones will be coming away from their mother, and they'll be set up similarly but kept separate, certainly for now. So not bad things to raise. Not bad things to raise at all. Anyway, I'll keep you posted on the little things, updates and progress. I'll update you with their progress, and I'll see you soon. Hope you enjoyed this. Just some thoughts in my head, triggered by an unknown event or an unplanned event for sure.